We're in a public meeting right now. We're in the public right now. We'll talk in our meeting, okay?
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. We'll start shortly. All right.
Hey,
Okay, you close to getting in or?
I had to restart my computer, but it looks like I'm gonna get in right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm gonna start without you if that's okay. Okay, so good morning, everybody. We are actually going to begin. I just want to welcome everybody. We're going to take questions and answers. Hopefully, everybody had time to look at the state guidance, our own plan, the questions that were created for the community, the questions that were created by you, and we answered most of them. We had an issue with Google last night. Mr. Gazzetto answered all the questions, and then it didn't come through. So that's why I sent you what we had. He will finish those up this morning, and then we'll send them back. I know there was a music question as well that Mr. Trapani's answering, and some computer questions that Mrs. Cavieri or Dr. Cavieri is answering. So we will go through that. I know I sent you the PowerPoint that we did with the community. We just don't want to read to you. We know that you are certainly looking at it, and we want to be able to answer your questions. The one thing I do want to state before we begin, if you have personal questions that really just pertain to you and it would give out personal information, please don't answer that in the question and answer, because once we answer it, it will go out to all the participants. So your privacy may be compromised, and we don't want to do that. We will go into a few different areas today. I know Mr. Caravana and Dr. Ramos are going to talk about a little bit about the expectations and what we need. And if you have questions, we'll answer that. Mr. Caravana, do you want to talk about the personnel aspect of what we talked about yesterday?
Sure. So we've gotten some emails and some requests with regard to modifications in the workplace. What we're asking for is the appropriate medical documentation that presents specific accommodation. So for example, if you are requesting to work remotely, we would need medical documentation attesting to that, saying from the doctor that it is his recommendation that you work remotely. We would also need you to sign a release for us to share your information with our own district doctor in order to render a decision. Understand that accommodations can range from a different specialized mask to a different location, and the most severe accommodation would be remote learning, where you are physically remote as well.
Okay, so now I'm going to apologize because I know Mr. Langone came to just welcome everybody. So Mr. Langone, if you could welcome everybody, and then we'll continue with the webinar.
Hey, Dan, thank you very much. So good morning, everybody. First off, I didn't expect to actually ever do one of these where I can see the 6 of the cabinet and not all of you guys. But nonetheless, here we are. I did want to, first of all, just thank everybody for being there for our kids. I know this is a really difficult time. Everybody's concerned about their own personal safety. And, one of the things that I want to let you guys all know is that from Mr. Giordano on down throughout the cabinet and the Board of Ed, we really, really 100% want to commit to having a safe working environment, to having an environment where you can feel comfortable coming in to a building, and that you'll be able to not be concerned about walking in there, and just really be concerned about focusing on giving our kids of Lindenhurst an education. I know everybody scrambled like crazy throughout the spring to try to make that happen, and under the circumstances, I think we did as good a job as we possibly could. I want to just thank administration and everybody who worked on any of the committees over the second half of July, to take 140 something pages of bureaucratic gobbledygook, if you will, into a pretty darn good plan that provides for an education for the kids and provides a safe environment for you guys to work. So thank you guys. My hats are off to you guys for making that happen. So I don't want to really take much of the time here. Just wanted to just put out there, just from the board, a sincere thank you for what you guys do every day, and for going into this with an open mind, and just really being there for the children of Lindenhurst. So thanks to all you guys, every one of you guys, whether you're a teacher, an aide, a custodian, a clerical, administrator, buildings and grounds, nurse, whoever I forgot, I apologize. I know you guys are all there for our kids, and I do appreciate that, and so does the rest of the board. So I'm going to hand it back to Mr. Giordano to get along with the Q&A. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ed. So everybody is aware, the plan will bring back the secondary schools at 25% and the elementary schools at 50%. The committees work tirelessly to really put together a plan that would limit the number of students in the classrooms, make sure there was social distancing of 6 feet, and make sure that we are staying safe. If you have any questions, and if you have any of those accommodations that you're looking for, if you could send it to staff reopening at lufsd.org, that would be where everything would come through. And that usually comes to myself, and Mr. Caravaner will get those from me. I'll forward them to him as well, and Dr. Romas. At this point, I guess, does anybody on the cabinet want to make any statements about their part of the plan? Or we could just go into questions and answers? You tell me.
Sure. Speaking with regard to our plan, first of all, thank you to everybody who participated. And a special thank you to Dr. Brody and Dr. Noviello, who had really preliminarily sketched out some of the different possible iterations of the plan. The main piece that really governed our plan, and the question that we've been asked over and over again, is why are we not bringing kids in more frequently? And the reason is simple. We believe it is easier to err on the side of caution, to start with the 25% at the secondary level and the 50% at the elementary level, and build up from there. It is far easier to do that than it is to attempt to scale back when the horse is already out of the barn. Safety is our paramount concern, and lots of write-in responses from the parent survey that we had administered on Parent Square spoke to the dissatisfaction of wearing masks all day. If you have ever been on the 3rd floor of that middle school in September, then you understand. So we wanted staff and students to be able to minimize wearing masks. So certainly during passing and whatnot, common areas, yes. But once students get to the classroom, the hope is that you will create an assigned seat for them, distanced with the 6 feet, so that you can take the masks off. And then certainly we're also asking all teachers and administrators to be vigilant, standing in the doorway, ensuring social distancing. It is all of our responsibilities, not just a handful of administrators that are present in each building, sometimes one at the elementary school. So we ask for everybody's full cooperation in addressing this. And I think it's especially important to say that this really needs to happen from day one. The tone needs to be set. So we all need to model wearing those masks, being vigilant, and creating a culture of this being the normal for now.
You're on mute, Dan.
I did get a question about how many people filled out the survey. I have a copy of it in front of me. It was 2,170 people. So that was a question that was answered. Again, just so you know, there's going to be a protocol in place that if there are any issues related to COVID, Michael Van Wart, who is our assistant business administrator, will be in charge of answering any of those questions. He's been very, very vigilant in making sure we have all of our protocols in place. Michael, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I mean, what I'll add to what Vinny already said is, the buildings are going to look completely different than what you are accustomed to. This year is not going to be business as usual. When you come into the buildings, there's going to be health screenings that are going to occur. Further information about how that's actually going to be performed for staff will be communicated out to all the district employees. But more or less, just to give you a snippet of what we're looking at implementing, is we're going to be purchasing the BOCES product, which will automate make an electronic questionnaire, which all staff will be required to complete. 5 questions will be asked every single day in accordance with New York State Department of Health guidelines. Do you have a fever over 100 degrees, which is the threshold defined by the New York State Department of Health? Do you have COVID-19? I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. If you have COVID-19, you should not be entering our buildings. Have you been exposed to somebody with COVID-19 symptoms or somebody with a positive test for COVID-19? Have you been traveling to a state on the New York State travel advisory list? Have you been in close proximity with somebody with COVID-19? Basically, if you answer yes to any of those questions, you should not be going to work. They'll be checked at security checkpoints at every single entry point to the buildings. You'll also get a temperature check when you're coming into our buildings. So we're working diligently with all the building principals to set up those security checkpoints across all of our buildings in a manner that's going to allow us to get our staff and our students into the buildings in a very timely manner. So that's a major change that you're going to see this year. I want to echo what Mr. Caravano was saying around being diligent and modeling good behaviors around face mask wearing. We all need to work together as a team to make sure that we're maintaining safety throughout our buildings. If you see somebody who has this COVID-19 symptom or a student that has a COVID-19 symptom, they should be sent to the nurse's office for an evaluation. In some cases, students may have an underlying medical condition that's causing those COVID-19 those symptoms to appear as COVID-19 symptoms. But the nurses are going to be responsible for identifying whether they actually are a COVID-19 symptom or they can be attributed to some underlying medical condition. The big challenge is going to be if we have somebody that we suspect of having COVID-19, they can't enter our buildings according to New York State Department of Health. They have to be sent home right away. And there's minimum re-entrance criteria that need to be met for somebody to return back to our buildings. So if you have been suspected of having COVID-19 or you've reported on the health screening form that you have COVID-19 symptoms, at a minimum, you need to have a COVID-19 diagnostic test, a medical evaluation, and you need to not have symptoms before you can return to work. So, you know, it's going to be a challenging year for all of us, but we need to partner together to make sure that we're creating a safe environment as possible for our staff and our students.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Vimwart. Somebody asked the question, will we be having an extra day for some training? Yes, I'm working with Mr. Pastor to come up with a plan for that. We're talking about maybe starting the Thursday prior to Labor Day, and if people are away, we were going to come up with a way for them to do it remotely. That's in the works. I will be continuing to talk to Mr. Pastor today. It's definitely something we want to do. We want to make sure, and then we would substitute that with the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So that would be your day off to give together, I guess, is the way to say it. Do we want to start looking at some of the questions in the chat and answering them?
Mr. Giordano, can I just
Yes.
say a few words?
I'm sorry, Dr. Romas.
It's all
Go
right.
ahead.
Hi, I just want to say hi to everyone. I hope that you were able to enjoy some time this summer, despite all of the, current events that are going on. It is certainly a trying time for everyone, but hopefully you had some, nice time with your family. With that said, I want to thank Laura Colosa, Farah McKenna, and Marcy Miller, who helped develop the elementary plan. We kicked around a few ideas. We went back and forth. And although I know there were only 2 elementary principals on that committee, I know that they spoke with their colleagues and tapped them for their knowledge and experience on that as well. The plan we came up with really was the best way to get kids in the most amount of time. One of the questions that parents keep coming up with is, why didn't we do a Tuesday, Thursday, and a Wednesday, Friday, and then maybe an alternating Monday for AB? There are quite a few reasons for that. But the way that we have it, there's continuity. And that's, I think, one of the, the best reasons I could say to support the learning for children. Children can't really disappear now. They're going to be accountable to you, and they're going to have to explain why they didn't get their work done the night before. So I think it just sort of holds them accountable for the work that needs to be done. That you can teach, but it really is also on the onus of the child to do their part in the learning as well. Thank you for everything. I know that in the spring, this was a new learning experience for everyone. And I know that I approved so many conferences of teachers that were saying, I need to learn how to do this. I need to get better at this. You asked great questions, and you sought out the learning that you needed to be more effective in your teaching practices for your students. So I want to thank everyone for that. And, you know, we're all learning and trying to navigate this new normal with you all. And I just want to say thank you.
Mr. Carney, do you, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. When we approached our special ed reopening plan, we realized that many of our learners, our most at-risk learners, struggled with the remote learning plan. So we tried to maximize how much seat time they would have and how much in-person instruction they could receive. So at our elementary level, K through 5, we were able to bring back our 15-1 students at Allegheny, our 10-1-1 at Harding, our life skills students, and also our ABA students at Daniel Street every day in person. Because of their class size and the structure of their classroom, we realized how important it is for them to receive in-person instruction, so we were able to do that. K through 12, all of our life skills students will come in every day for in-person instruction. Again, this population of students really tends to struggle with remote learning, and we're trying to maximize how much in-person instruction they can have. A lot of questions that came in from parents at the town hall and also some of our staff members in their FAQ is how we are going to approach related services. So we will continue to approach related services in the same manner with regard to our staff members forming schedules at the building level. The premise behind this is to maintain some normalcy for the staff and also to maximize how many in-person services our students can receive via related services. So we understand that many students have multiple pullouts and multiple services, and some of this will have to be supplemented with remote learning, but we're trying to reduce that to the greatest extent possible. So when we came up with our special ed plan, we tried to figure out a way in which we can have students in as much as possible and also maintain a safe learning environment, just like we did with our approach to the elementary and secondary that my colleagues just explained. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. I know there's some questions, so we'll start to answer the questions. Let me just, I have a separate screen for that, so bear with me if I look this way. If we're not comfortable with students not wearing masks in class, especially when we as teachers are walking around, in all honesty, and Mr. Caravan, do you want to answer that? Or I mean, I don't want to answer for you.
Sure. So that was, as I had mentioned, one of the governing reasons that we went with 25% capacity. The logic being, if we were going to wear masks anyway, then we could follow suit with what other districts had done and bring even more students in. So there was a little bit of a give to get there. So no, unfortunately, I do not believe, unless you have medical documentation, that we can require students to wear a mask in the classroom.
Okay, so thank you, sir. How many desks will be in the classroom? I know each building is setting up their classrooms a little bit differently. Mr. Van Worten, myself, were over at a couple of buildings with Mr. Gazzetto the other day. We're measuring out distances. In the elementary schools, parents are very reluctant. And Lisa, you can jump in if I misanswer, but in the elementary schools, the parents are very reluctant for a student to share a desk with another student. So we have been setting it up so on A days, this row will be used, on B days, this row will be used, and we've been socially distancing and making sure there's 6 foot in between. Lisa, do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. You know, having the children 6 feet apart doesn't necessarily mean that every piece of furniture has to be 6 feet apart. I mean, there's also a storage issue. If we were to take half of the desks out of every one of the classrooms, we'd have no place to store them realistically. So if you have the desks, you have one student sitting here and another student sitting here. You know, each classroom, as you know, is a little different. They might vary slightly in size. Obviously, the number of students you have in there is going to vary. And some of the extraneous furniture has been removed from the rooms. So they are going to be a lot emptier than what, you know, we've normally had in the past. So there will be sufficient space, you know, and again, speak to the building principal. If there's a certain need you have because of the size of your room, speak to them, and, you know, we're going to work together and work it out.
Absolutely. Will plexiglass be around the teacher's computer area? Absolutely. We can't do that. Number one, there's not a lot of approved materials. Everybody sees all these advertisements. The fire marshal, everything we have been submitting goes to the fire marshal. The fire marshal denies it in most cases because it's not the correct material. But again, everybody is distanced 6 feet apart. So we need to make sure from day one that we start, enforcing with the students that you're not to come up to your desk. Make sure that they just keep the 6 foot distancing. It's something we're gonna have. I mean, I would hope that some degree they would be used to it by now. Everywhere you go has those, those markers, and we could actually put markers around your desk if you'd like. We could talk to the custodians in the building. But I think we're setting it up so everybody's 6 foot away from where the students will be.
We got that question from a couple of the teachers too. Will the classrooms be pre-configured before they come into the classroom, or will they have to set it up themselves? The building principals right now are working with the custodial staff to pre-configure all of the classrooms. I saw a couple questions in here around proximity of desks to the smart learning boards. The desks are going to be configured in a manner that allows for social distancing between where the board is and the first row of the desks.
Thank you. What are the rules for staff to decide self-quarantine? Michael, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I mean, if you're screening yourself positively on those questionnaire questions that I mentioned before, you should be staying home and getting a COVID-19 diagnostic test. Any decisions on isolation orders, so that's really a function of the local Department of Health or your healthcare provider. Self-quarantine are only mandated by those two governing bodies. What the district is doing is, if you are screened as being suspected of having COVID-19, we just can't allow you to come back into the building, and we would direct you to get a health evaluation and a COVID-19 diagnostic test.
Okay. Well, who will be cleaning the desks in between periods? Well, at the elementary school, the students will not leave their desks, so they would not. In all honesty, we have to work out a plan with the high school and the middle school. We need to come up with some kind of plan. Every room would have Virex in it, so it's really a matter of just spraying the desks because it dries in 10 minutes. And I would alternate wherever the seats are. Again, I'm gonna meet with Dr. Brody and Mr. Nacarado shortly to discuss a plan for that. And of course, we'd have to work that out with Mr. Pastor. So, I mean, that's where we're at with that at this point. Again, I see a question about screens. We're making sure that every room has at least one screen in it. Not every room needs to have screens in it. I mean, people open windows all the time. We will work to see if we can add screens. I know right now we're just making sure that every room has at least one screen. If a teacher, as a precaution, is required to quarantine at home due to the exposure to a student, will the be charged sick days and be given the option to work from home? I know you have an answer for that, Mr. Van Wert.
I can answer that one. Yep. So if you are given an isolation order by the Department of Health or your healthcare provider, you are entitled to federal sick leave benefits under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So you would not be charged sick time. You would be given paid sick leave under that law at no expense to yourself. Employees in the district who have the ability to work from home will be given laptops or whatever devices they would need to be able to work from home. For those that can't, then you would just get the paid sick leave.
Thank you, sir. Students at the high school level are already asking to change some classes. Guidance counselors already went through every course to balance the cohorts. How do we handle the schedule changes? Vin, do you want to address that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Okay, students at the high school are already asking changes for some classes. Guidance counselors already went through every course to try to balance cohorts. How do we now handle those changes?
Well, it's still incumbent on us to meet the student's needs. So if the student decides that he or she wants to take honors studies instead of AP social studies, we still need to make that accommodation for them. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, yeah, no, I think you're right. We have to look at the schedules, and certainly we would try to work it out so it's within the cohort and it works within the numbers. I mean, that's what we would work to do. The next question is, oh boy, hold on, I'm sorry. Somebody asked for a definition of the synchronized instruction, Mr. Caravana? Or Dr. Lomas?
Sure. We can both speak to that. Do you have that visual, Dan?
Which visual?
Visual for the secondary? In the PowerPoint, if you could pull that up while I explain, that would be great.
Sure.
What we had decided as a committee collaboratively was to go the route of 100 minutes of synchronous instruction from the teacher's perspective at a minimum. Let me explain what that means. At the secondary level, you teach 5 40-minute periods for a total of 200 minutes. So we went with 50% as a safe number, as a minimum, in response to parents saying that there was not enough direct contact with teachers. So these 100 minutes, that does not necessarily mean that you are literally on a video with them. It just means that you are synchronously accessible to that child. So if I were to give you a hypothetical situation, and I'll go in my wheelhouse, which is English. If you were doing a timed writing exercise, right, and you've got 7 kids in class and you've got 20 kids working remotely, for example, they're going to be writing this essay. Your synchronous instruction is going to be you being available to those students who are working remotely if they have a question. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to sit literally on camera the way we are now. It just means that for that period of time, you are accessible to that student. And it's at your discretion, you as the teacher. So for example, if I want to say as a PE teacher, okay, I'm going to give you this, this scavenger hunt, or I'm going to give you this obstacle course or this fitness task. You can theoretically have the students do that and say, we're not going to remotely meet tomorrow, but we will, in 2 days. So it's subjective there. If you have something, a project that is going to take a little bit longer, there's flexibility. Students are being directed to report online remotely to the classroom for their respective period, unless otherwise told by the teacher. So it's at your discretion if you want to be able to say, okay, we don't need to meet at 7:20 a.m. tomorrow for live instruction. We're going to do something a little bit different. As long as you hit that 100 minutes minimum synchronously a day, you're good to go. Dr. Olmus, you want to speak to this maybe with an elementary mentality?
Sure. Okay, so I know that the elementary principals have sort of created sort of like a mock schedule. I think what we need for parents to understand is that even though the child is sitting in childcare or sitting at home or sitting in grandma's house, that their attendance is expected. Attendance needs to be taken. So if school would typically start at 9:05, they're going to open their laptops and, you'll have a Google Meet where the kids would be able to either see your board, et cetera, et cetera. So I think one of the questions also is, what about the privacy of the other children? The other children are not going to be on the live stream. So here we are, we're going to have a Google Meet. Good morning, everyone. Let's take attendance. We could have our morning meeting. We will discuss our schedule. Today's Tuesday, we have gym at 10:45. So we'll start our literacy block at 9:30. You'll do your live a wonders lesson, your introduction, whatever the overarching theme is for the day with regard to wonders. You don't stand up typically and instruct for 100 minutes. So your mini lesson might be about 20 minutes and then say, okay, well, this is your assignment now. And the students at home will sort of log off, work on their independent work, or you'll take a small group, work with them, and the rest of the class will work independently. Then at 10:15 or whatever it is, 10:45, your class will go to gym. That child who's on synchronous will, do whatever the PE teacher has placed on their board. And you'll say, okay, we're going to reconvene at 11:30 and we're going to start our math lesson. And here now those students who are on remote will turn their computers back on, making sure that they're at 11:30. Now, what does that mean? That means that we'll probably have to, roll the schedule out to parents so that they have better support to know when things are going to happen. Typically on a master schedule, there are defined math blocks and literacy blocks. So those things, there are defined special times. So you can let parents know what those are in your daily schedule. I think having a morning meeting to take attendance with all of the students, both sitting in class and remote, is important. It sort of sets the tone and the expectation for learning for all students, those both remote and those sitting in class. And it, I think, creates a stronger community, that the kids that are distant, they may be distant physically, but emotionally we're still together and we're still one unit, one school community. So that also speaks to SEL. During that time, that could be your SEL, 10-minute lesson. Let's talk about this, that, the other. And then here's the schedule for the day. And the students who are working remote, they're not sitting in front of a computer for 6.5 hours. They're there for the live viewing of those lessons. You may say, okay, turn back on at 2:30. We're going to do a small group guided reading where I'm going to work with you one-on-one on, either, math or reading or science or whatever it is. We're going to do an experiment here. Show me this, etc. So that's sort of what it should look like.
Thank you, Dr. Omas. Mr. Caravana, if you guys can ask, there's a question that says, can you please discuss teachers taking a leave for childcare issues? How long can we take? Will the leave be approved even though it is not for medical reasons?
This is a question from Michael, I believe.
Well, I don't think they're talking about for COVID. I think they're talking for childcare.
I can address
So-
the COVID if it's a if it's a leave for COVID-19 related childcare situation. So if you have your daycare center or your child's childcare provider closes due to COVID-19 reasons, you are entitled under Families First Coronavirus Response Act for extended paid sick leave benefits up to, I think it's 12 weeks of 66% of your salary with a cap of $211, $215 per day. If it's related to some other means beyond COVID-19.
200 a day, capped at 2,000 aggregate. I have
There you
the
go.
form.
Right.
Thank you,
And if
Lisa.
it is not COVID related, it would be our standard protocol.
Okay.
Mr. Giordano, do you want me to address the COVID-19 question on if a student is?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so I can speak to that. So if we have a positive diagnostic test case, that gets reported by the local healthcare provider that administered the diagnostic test to the local health department. The local health department gets in contact with the district. At that point, contact tracing kicks off. We act in a support role with DHS, Suffolk County Department of Health Services. We provide them attendance information. We provide them visitor logs, student schedules, basically to determine whether that infected individual had close contact with other individuals in our buildings. Close contact is defined according to the Suffolk County Department of Health Services as within 6 feet of space for an extended period of time, which is 10 minutes or longer. So practically, what does that mean? If we have a student that is diagnosed as positive that was in your class, it's very likely that everybody in that class might be given an isolation order to the Department of Health Services. They're the ones that make all final determinations on whether you're given an official isolation order. The district is going to support those efforts by providing information.
Okay, I'm going to ask another question. As for Suffolk County Department of Health recommendations on 8/11, all students, even when 6 foot of social distancing, should wear masks. Breaks should be allowed. Why is Lindenhurst not following the recommendations for optimal safety? Michael, do you want to answer that, or Vin?
It's a recommendation. It's not a mandate through the guidelines. If we were to mandate it, we can mandate it if we want, but we decided not to because of the results on the parent survey that came back to the district. We may reevaluate that going forward, but as we're starting off now with the density of students in our buildings, we have enough space to socially distance beyond the 6 feet that's required by the Department of Health guidelines. So masks would be redundant in the classroom.
Okay, are the number of teachers sharing the classroom at the high school level going to be considered? I don't know what the question would be. Everything's scheduled as if it was a regular building. We want this to be seamless if we go back. So I would believe that everybody who's working as normal, there's no consideration was made at that point. Let's see. If pullouts happen, who's cleaning the desks and tables before the next group? Again, that's something, like I said, we're going to discuss with Mr. Pastor. When students have reading and math services in the elementary buildings, how will that work with each student having the desks set and me teaching the rest of the class? Dr. Romas, do you want to address that? You're muted, Lisa.
Can you say it again? I was typing a response to another question.
Sure. When students have reading and math services in the elementary buildings, how will it work with each child having their desk set and me teaching the rest of the class?
Push in and pull out will be determined by the size of the group that you have at that time and the amount of space. As you know, every elementary school has a different amount of space and different teachers have different size rooms. So for example, let's say at West Gates, you have Erin Casadoy and Christine Coluccio. They share an entire classroom that is split with a divider. You know, if they have, let's say, 2 students in their group and 1 student that is on remote, so they have a total of 3 students in that group, they could, you know, pull out the 2 students, work in their classroom and socially distance there. If there isn't enough space, the students could wear the mask for that period. And then the child who's on remote can still participate within the group. However, they would be doing it remotely. You know, if it's a push-in, we would look to get, I know that Mr. Giordano said that we were looking into what barriers might be available for the small group instruction. So we're still working that out, but we will make it work. You know, we have to live with it and reevaluate it as we go on.
Okay, so I'll give you a question, Mr. Caravana. When we are teaching a group in person, are the other groups learning through live streaming? So if we have group A in person, B, C, D, learning through live streaming, that's the question.
Yes, that's correct. So B, C, and D would be remote and A would be in person. So you'll want to get creative with your lessons. And if you're thinking, well, this flies in the face of all of the district initiatives that we've done for the past 6 years. Yeah, it does. Unfortunately, you know, it's not conducive. The learning environment right now is not conducive to a parent share, to an elbow partner, to small groups, because we're moving away from that as a result of COVID. And all administrators have been advised, FYI teachers as well, that should be taken into consideration when we conduct observations. You know, nobody is going to penalize you and say there wasn't enough student interaction. Well, there can't be right now unless you're going to use breakout rooms for remote. You know, we're going to do the best we can, certainly, but we all understand that there is a learning curve here. You know, I don't want to say that there's a moratorium on observations because we can't legally do that. APPR is in place, and so our plan has the 2 different observations, but you know, we want observations to be in person as much as possible, only as a last resort. If we were full remote, would they ever be remote? We want you to be successful. It's not a gotcha mentality. And you know, I know I'm digressing, but I think that it's important to get this out there. We're going to go in with kid gloves, just like we want you to do with the students. We want you to be successful.
Okay.
I can address this one, Dan. If a teacher comes to school feeling okay, but has a fever and gets sent home, is that a sick day? What if they to teach remotely that day from home? So if you are demonstrating a COVID-19 symptom, you cannot come to work, like I said earlier. You should get a diagnostic test. If you are seeking a medical diagnosis and a diagnostic test for COVID-19 symptoms, you are entitled to paid sick leave benefits again under FFCRA up to a max of 80 hours a week. So if you're seeking a medical diagnosis, that's not your sick time that you're using, except if you go beyond those 80 hours.
Okay, thank you, Michael. There are some classroom bathrooms as well that have poor ventilation. What could be done to make sure the air, I know they're going through all the ventilation systems as we speak. I was talking to Tommy Wolf, who's in charge of that this morning. They were doing that. They've changed the protocol on changing all the filters. It's going to be much more often. So they are working to make sure that that we have adequate ventilation. Certainly, if you see something, say something. I know that's a weird line, but let us know, and we will certainly address it as quickly as we possibly can. What else? Again, somebody asked if the custodians more custodians are needed. Why not pull the custodians and add them to the day? We would never have enough custodians to actually go through and clean every room in between every period. That would be virtually impossible. And we are doing a deep cleaning at night, including spraying all the buildings with Virex to make sure that they're safe for the next morning. So that unfortunately is not really a realistic thing to do because we never, no matter how many we pulled in, it wouldn't be enough. Let's see, what is the plan for the use of district libraries? Lisa, Vinny, do you want to address that at this point?
The libraries, as long as we can maintain 6-foot social distancing, libraries can function as they normally would. Kids can take out books. I would just caution, to be a little bit more vigilant in terms of maybe wiping things down and whatnot and using hand sanitizers directly afterwards, just the way you would do if you unloaded groceries.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Does the district Wi-Fi adequately reach the athletic fields at the middle school? Vin, do you want to address that? I know Mr. Messi was talking about putting something out to the teachers.
I can't speak to the Wi-Fi.
Actually, Mr. Giordano, I might be able to, if that's okay.
Right. I don't foresee it getting all the way out to the
Oh, no.
field. Go ahead.
We had put some out in the central location inside of the courtyard at the middle school. It's we can look into the cost for doing it out at fields. It's just highly expensive because of the type of Wi-Fi, my understanding, that kind of has to go out there. That's my best tech answer. Sorry.
So that's okay. So Dave,
Okay.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Mr. Messi to, and we'll get that an answer for that because there may be some alternate plan. All right. Hold on. Okay. Sorry about that. Can the bell schedule be altered to allow less students within the halls? Let's not lose sight that we're going to be operating at 25% of the students. So there's going to be significantly less students in the halls. I know Dr. Brody had some plans in place that she wanted to have announcements made. Unfortunately, we may need to break that rule of no announcements in between class. But I think we need to reinforce that social distancing and wearing masks in the halls happens at all times. So I think that may be one of the parts of the plan. So we need to look at that and make sure that we're vigilant with that. How are we to reach small groups in such close proximity? Masks must be worn. Correct. Dan, you just said elementary students will not leave their desks for small group work. Do you want to address that, Lisa? You're muted, Lisa. Lisa, you're muted.
I
Sorry.
know, I'm trying to unmute. It doesn't always work. What is the question? I'm trying to read and answer questions simultaneously
It
here.
was how are they going to do small group work? I said that they weren't going to leave their desks. So was in the elementary school.
Right, but we do have kidney tables and we did discuss that those barriers would be used as small group instruction and the children would be wearing their masks for a small group guided reading. This is
Yes.
what we discussed.
Okay, yes, I agree. All right. Again, are there plans to hire additional custodians? At this time, we feel we're well staffed. If we need, we did say we were gonna revisit that. And if we needed more, we certainly would hire some people. At this point, we think we could do it since the buildings will be closed right after school is out. Has it been determined that we are going to be live video streaming our classes to the other students at home? How has it been determined? That was worked out with Mr. Pastor. So I mean, that would be the answer I have for you. What camera is being used for live streaming? It will actually be the Chromebook camera. That's what we'll have there, our students. Again, the camera doesn't have to be on the person itself. I will say this, we did purchase a thing called a Smart Learning Suite, which will connect your smartboard directly to the student's Chromebook. So that could be an advantage. The voice would come through the Chromebook and you could project anything you wanted onto the
Mr.
smartboard.
Giordano, would you like me
Yes.
to speak to that for a minute?
Please.
Okay, so to go along with the Chromebooks that every teacher will have, that you could definitely use for, use the camera and then, have it set up through the Google Meet that you were active and live so the students could see you. Smart Learning Suite will allow you to take any of your smartboard lessons, put them into that program, and then I will make a video for you on how you can then take that and share it out in the Google Meet, and then you could be sitting at your Chromebook and explaining the lesson using your mouse to show the different parts of your lesson to the students. And for the students that were in your classroom, I'd also show you how it'll project onto the board that the students in the room, if they weren't on their Chromebooks, would be looking at. And that way everyone would be seeing your same lesson that you would be working on.
Thank you, Dr. Cavieri. The next question is, would you suggest that student keeps their snacks, lunch boxes, and backpacks hung behind their desk? Lisa, do you want to address that? That's an elementary.
Sure, backpacks being, don't forget, we're only going to have half the students in the classroom. So there will be a little bit more room to navigate. I know, let's say in a 5th grade classroom, if you have a class max of 28 students and they all have their backpacks laying around, it becomes a tripping hazard. That I get. So number one, we're going to have half the number of students. So it's not going to be as filled as it normally is. Yeah, I would say either have them on the back, because we really can't have lockers and you don't want things shared to eliminate cross-contamination. You'll have to see how it works within your classroom.
Okay, thank you. The next question, I think I should save and maybe ask Ms. Schilling. It says E&L students were not able to complete most of the assignments online due to different issues, language barrier, lack of equipment, parents who are working. How are we proposing to solve these problems this year? In elementary level, E&L services are hybrid. So I'm gonna give that to Ms. Schilling and ask her to help us with that one. Are students allowed to use classroom computers if their scheduled class is in such a classroom? For example, the high school computers lab classes. I don't even know, do we have an answer to that? I'd have to talk to Dr. Brody and see. They may have a plan within the building for it to be cleaned in between periods, but I will, again, I'll get that answered. Will the coronavirus paid sick leave affect our seniority? Vinny or Michael?
No.
It's out of your control. It would not affect seniority.
Yeah,
Okay.
no.
Thank you, sir.
Dan, I can take this one. Are we still signing in out using our fingerprints? The answer to that is no. The district has purchased a little device that it can attach to your badge, so you can just tap it against the check-in. And we also have styluses that we'll be distributing out to all employees, so you don't have to touch the screen. And then the follow-up question to that was, are we going to be supplied with cleaning solutions so that the kids can clean their desks before the next class comes in? Mr. Gazzetto has assured me that he will be offering Virex, which is a virus disinfectant solution for all classrooms if the teachers want them. so we can make that available.
In all honesty, though, the students are not, as per the state guidelines, the students are not allowed to clean their rooms, their
Right.
specific areas. What happens if a student refuses to show their face or participate in synchronous learning? What will be the protocol if a student signs on, turns off the screen, and puts an icon picture up instead of their face? Again, we'll have to have that conversation with their parent. Make sure their parent is aware that it's happening, just like if a student came in and put their head down on their desk and didn't do the work. We'll have to have that conversation with the parent. If not, go
Mr.
ahead.
Giordano,
Sure.
to everyone that, you know, even us being on these meetings right now and some of us having our faces on and others not, and I know we do have like 500 participants on this, it all will go back to that student's Wi-Fi at their home as well. So we want to be very mindful of that. I'm sure even in your own houses with your own children, you know, you put on an Xbox, you put on a couple other things going on and the Wi-Fi starts slowing down. If the students have to keep the teacher's face on that screen, that's a lot of data coming in to make that happen. So the students you may be asking them to turn it on and off, or they may have to turn it off because they'll get very glitchy if the Wi-Fi at the house is not good. So it just might be like a practice that you want to do, maybe every so often, asking the students to, you know, go on screen so that you could see they are there, because it might be better to allow them not to stay on screen for the entire time, as it's so much data traveling back and forth. That's just an idea and something we might need to look at.
And I know Dr. Omas and Mr. Caravana put out protocols for parents, which the board has approved. So they will be putting that out to parents so that they know what's expected of them in the house. I don't know if you want to address that at this time, Dr. Omas, or if you want to do it at a later date, we can.
Sure. You know, I sort of took from what Mr. Chamberlain had and just sort of revised it a bit, just so that we're clear to parents that remote learning means students are in school. The behaviors that are expected in class are those should mirror what is being seen during remote. Listen, are we going to get every kid to attend to the best? Listen, you can't do that even when kids are in school. Some kids don't do their homework, some kids cut class, you know, but we can lay our heads on our pillow knowing that we've done what we can to try and fully support that parent and that household, whether or not they're receiving it or not. Some of the protocols, you know, indicate that students should limit distractions. Students should be, you know, dressed and sitting at a table and ready to receive instruction, because that's going to create a mindset that they're in school and they will attend to the lessons that are being presented to them. You know, I sat in on a couple of classes that I was invited to, and the kid's laying down in bed in her pajamas, you know, like this, and certainly not putting their all into receiving instruction. And I know that some of the complaints were from parents were that, you know, oh, this didn't work. But, you know, learning is a two-way street. I'm going to give you the information, but you have to be ready to receive it, and you have to do the work. You have to put it in as well. And so part of the protocols are really having the parents and the guardians understanding what the expectation is for learning, and to also share that information with whatever caregiver is going to be watching their child at home. You know, and again, let's hope that this is short-lived.
Oh, absolutely. So Ms. Schilling had asked me to reiterate something, so she did text it to me. She asked me to mention that ENL entering and emerging students at the secondary level will come in every day. So that is something that they will be in every day. And that was kind of an answer to one of the questions that was brought up. In elementary, though, ENL services are hybrid. Kindergarten, Lisa, how are kindergarten expected to log in several times a day at different times to watch lessons? Many of these children will be with grandparents or at daycare.
Okay, so again, kindergarten is going to be a challenge. That's, you know, there's no doubt about that. And what we can do is offer assistance to the families via, you know, the building administrator, the school social worker, the school psychologist, to try and help families in the best way that we can. Is it going to be, is it a perfect scenario where kindergarten students will be working with technology that early and trying to receive lessons? No, but if we provide a schedule, to the families so that they know exactly when the child needs to come on, they can help them. And remember, the child will be in class every other day with this schedule. So we can try and do what we can to support the child while they're there, show them, here, this is the time, give it to grandma. And you know what? If grandma needs help learning how to navigate this, we should provide that assistance to any of the caregivers to help them understand how to navigate it so that they can help the children as well at home.
Dr. Omis, just to add to your thoughts on that, when we had to go remote originally, we did set up on the website, very accessible to parents, as many resources as we could from the IT tech department, from educational technology, and try to really help parents with all sorts of videos and anything else we could. And we will be setting up the number again where parents can reach someone to get assistance with on, if they're stuck, if something's going wrong on the devices at home, and things will be handled as we did when it was all remote. So we will be trying and just making those websites much more robust with additional information, but that's how we're looking to help support families. And as we are with you, like where I'm making videos on how to use Google Meet, there'll be ones for the parents as well to, for whoever's helping the students.
Thank you, Dr. Carrieri and Dr. Omis. If students use equipment, materials during a class without sharing, can those materials be used during the next class period if they are cleaned between? Absolutely. I know Mr. Caravana, had answered that before. And this is a good question. If a per diem, and I'm going to assume it's a sub employee with no sick time benefits, is given a quarantine order, would they receive their usual daily pay during that quarantine? Michael, I think that would probably be a best question for you.
Yep. If you're issued an isolation order, you qualify under FFCRA and are entitled to up to 2 weeks of paid sick leave benefits, but it's capped at $511 per day.
Yeah, I don't think that's an issue. Again, this may be a building specific issue, but it's a tech question, Dr. Cavieri. What tech internet changes have been made so we can have the capability to live stream from our classrooms?
Okay, so I am aware that we've added another gig of internet to the district, so we are now at 2 gigs. And according to network operations, that amount of internet and everything else that's in those buildings will allow the ability for live stream to happen. We can always up that amount of Wi-Fi if needed, but on calculations that are well beyond me, I was told that that's why that was picked. And that's pretty much how I asked myself if there was a way to test that in any way, shape, or form. And there really is no way until there's actually people on the network and testing things out. But mathematically and by all the switches and everything else that's in the buildings, it's able to handle live streaming from every classroom.
Okay, thank you. And then this is a question, I guess, for Dr. Maybe Dr. Cavieri and maybe Mr. Caravana. During any webinar I have attended, including this one, the presenter speaks to the audience, and there is always one person designated to answer questions posted into the chats. So will it be clear? So to be clear, we are now expected to be both the presenter and the responder at the same time while monitoring kids both in classroom and at home.
Yeah, I mean, naturally, it's not possible to do that as one person, and someone is not going to get your full attention. I would say do the best you can. Try to check in if you can with those who are learning remotely, but obviously, you can't be in 2 places at one time.
And you could also even set up a protocol that maybe their questions be, held to a certain time, or will be answered at a certain time. This way, that protocol will be followed. If we set, just like if it was your class and you set up different protocols for you for students to ask questions throughout the period or during the end or at the end of the
Mr.
period.
Giordano, can I just say something?
Sure.
I don't want anybody to think that we're intentionally ignoring their questions in the Q&A chat. I'm going through and answering whatever I'm capable of answering, but
Sure.
I know that there are quite a few questions that have to do with facilities and cleaning and whatnot. Is there a
And
way
we'll get the answers.
to have those answered? And I noticed quite a few tech questions as well that are a little bit out of my wheelhouse. So if you guys are not getting a response, please know it's not personal. We're answering what we're capable of answering.
Right, and then anything that's not, we will send it and share it with you, just like we're doing with the town hall. We had over 1,000 questions after yesterday's meeting. Many of them were duplicate, but again, we're going to go through, and this is all being recorded. It does record the Q&As, so anything that is not answered by the end of this this session will certainly be answered eventually. All right, I do see Ms. Kuzo said you meant pull the night custodians to add to the day. I did understand that. That's what you meant. But at night, they have to do a much deeper cleaning when the students aren't there. So that's why we're not adding them to the daytime. We need them more at night. In the past, we sent individual textbooks home and kept a class set. Can students still share a class set of textbooks without the use of lockers? It would be cumbersome for kids to carry them in their back and forth. We do agree with that. They just have to be wiped down in between each period. So it'll be very tough to do. If there's a way for you to wipe them down in between each period, that's certainly fine, but they have to be wiped down to some degree.
Mr. Giordano, I've been seeing a couple questions on PPE. Can I just address that?
Sure, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So the district has purchased a supply of disposable masks. We have about 30,000 currently sitting in central admin at this point. We have ordered N95 masks. We have face shields, a supply of face shields, disposable gowns, all the recommended PPE from the New York State Ed guidelines. We either have it in place, at least a 10-week supply of it, or the order is pending. All students or staff who don't have a disposable mask available to them when they're entering a building, or for students when they're entering a school bus, will be given a mask. I saw that question in there. Over the course of the day, if a student loses their mask and needs another one, the main offices should all have a supply of disposable masks as well. Some of the more sophisticated PPE, like the N95s, they're a little harder to come by. So the supply we have is a little bit limited. We're trying to get more. Anybody who has high close contact for an extended period of time with students that would be at higher risk, like our nurses' aides, our health screeners, they would be also given those more sophisticated pieces of PPE like face shields or an N95 mask.
Okay, thank you. Again,
Mr. Giordano,
go ahead, sorry.
can I read a whole bunch of the tech ones. Would it be all right if I address in
Absolutely,
general a
please.
couple? Sure.
Please do.
Okay, so in working with the cabinet, we are working on a plan that will start shortly to get all the Chromebooks around the district brought here to central administration. All teachers will be first on the list to receive a Chromebook and a charger if you don't already have one. And then from there, we will be moving on to the 6th grade one-to-one Chromebooks that will be going out, and the 5th grade. We will be taking back Chromebooks that were given out to students because we need to there's different types that are out there right now. We need to put them with specific grade levels for tracking and a few other purposes. So in the end of all this, over the next 3 weeks, we are going to try our absolute hardest using any means possible to make it happen that all students in the whole district will end up having a device in their hands that is a district device. It will be at home with them. We ordered cases. The cases will not be delivered shortly. So as we get those will go to buildings to go out to students. But again, it will be that almost, if you can imagine, that every student is one-to-one now. They're taking their Chromebook home. They can bring it into class with them. We will have spare Chromebooks as we do at the high school, middle school. Those teachers are much more familiar with that idea of that if a student forgets it, they can go to like a Chrome Depot for a loaner or something like that. We will have some at elementary schools. There will be chargers available. But as in the past, if a student loses their charger at home, we cannot purchase or give them extras. We need all the ones we have. We will have lists up for where the parents can purchase the appropriate chargers if they need them for the devices. And that's what we had been doing when we were completely remote. I think that pretty much helps answer quite a few of those questions about the Chromebooks. I don't know that it's set across the board if students are required to bring them in every single day yet. There are continuing meetings going on that I'm with the central administration, and I'm sure as more information on that is shared out, we'll get that out to everyone. But every single teacher and every single student in the district will have a Chromebook that will basically be theirs, and that will help with the spread of germs and allow them to do this A day, B day, or complete remote, or anything else going on.
Again, small reading groups that are not within 6 feet. Lisa, I know you addressed this already, so I'll reiterate. We are looking at barriers for those students, and they will be required to wear a mask in those small reading groups that can't be 6 foot distancing. Distancing. So that will happen. We ordered the dividers for those small groups. Plus, we're going to have they have to wear masks in those groups. So that's the answer to that one. Somebody asked about webcams. We are using the Chromebook as the device to actually stream. In all honesty, I know and they're coming from science teachers, so I do understand that. So certainly, if we need to reevaluate that, we'll certainly have discussions as we move forward. There is a huge shortage of webcams. We cannot get them. Correct me if I'm wrong, Aileen.
Yes, actually, we haven't been able to get them probably since I would almost say May of last year when this all started. They have been just back ordered, and they're hard to come by completely. So that's how we were looking to use what we had in place. And I completely could understand how high school science could have some very large challenges with that. But I'm sure maybe working with the coordinators and figuring out what else or other ideas we could come up with to help support that with maybe some digital items would be.
We'll continue to have ongoing dialogues with that. We just have to work with what we have right now.
Yeah.
We were made aware last night, so everybody is aware. There are districts who ordered Chromebooks so that they could put their hybrid model in place, and they did it a little later than we did. All of our Chromebooks are here, so we're in great shape. But some are being told they're not going to get them till the end of September, which kind of puts a kink in their plans. But we were proactive. We actually did what we needed to do, and certainly we'll have enough for every student and every teacher. Michael, there's a busing question. Can you maybe answer that question? The CDC recommends 1 student per seat and skipping rows. Our plan says 2 per seat with no rows being skipped.
Yeah, I mean, the plan for the transportation was designed so that if we go from a smaller population of students in our buildings at any particular point during the year, so we're at 25% now at the elementary, 50% at the 25% at the secondary level, 50% at the elementary level. We designed our procedures, our protocols to allow for a quick ramping up of students coming into the buildings if everything goes smoothly over the first couple of weeks. So the policy currently says a max of 42 students per bus. In practicality, in practical terms, with the current student density that are coming into the buildings, student populations on each of those buses is going to be significantly less to start with because masks are being mandated for all students riding the bus. You don't have to have 6 feet of social distancing between each of the students. It's encouraged. And initially, to start off, we would be placing students in a manner on those school buses to allow for 6 feet of social distancing to the greatest extent possible. But we're checking all of our bus routes again, but at this point, we're looking at much less than the total amount that's allowable under our policy. Those buses, I believe, fit on a normal bus route over 60 to 65 students. So we are reduced from a full capacity, but that was just written in terms just to allow us to basically switch from a 25% model up, ramp it up to a 50% model if necessary in the future. It'll give us a little bit more flexibility so that we can switch quicker. The way that we're doing busing, there's not going to be less buses that are going to be running every single day. The bus routes are going to remain the same across the entire district as if we were having 100% of our students coming into the buildings every single day. And that was designed that way to allow us to have the flexibility of being able to switch back and forth between a density model, a hybrid model, and a full instruction model if we ever get to the point where we're comfortable doing that in the future.
Thank you, Michael. Somebody asked if the survey was sent out only to parents, and yes, it was. And that's where the mask question was asked. It was not sent to anyone else. It was just sent to the parents. If we are teaching remotely for medical reasons, how will our schedules change, or will they? I'm not sure if there's a secondary or an elementary question. Vin, can you maybe address that?
Can you say it again, please, Mr.
Sure.
Giordano?
If we are teaching remotely for medical reasons, how will the schedules change, or will they?
Whose schedule? The teacher schedule?
Yes, the teacher schedule.
That would, you would be, okay, so if you were, if you had doctor's note accommodations that said you were required to work remotely, we would cross that bridge when we came to it. But basically, you would have that roster, and your students, the ones that are there physically, it really would be pointless at the secondary or elementary level, but they would be getting all the instruction remotely. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. What will happen if a student signs into Google Meet on time but leaves after 10 minutes? Would we consider them absent? Again, that would be a conversation to have with the parent. Just like if they were misbehaving in class, it's something we need to do. We need to be in contact with the parent. So I would hope that would resolve the issue. If not, then we'll move forward and bring it to building administration. Again, when a student sneezes, 6 foot distancing will not protect them. Other students or the teacher. Obviously, we may need to do protocols where we address the students and tell them if they're going to sneeze, they have to cover their arm, do what they have to do. If we need to teach them that, then we will certainly have to do that.
Mr. Chairman, I have another paid sick leave question I can address.
Sure.
Is the paid leave still in effect if multiple isolation orders are issued to an individual? So the answer to that is generally yes, but it's capped. So it's aggregated. So if you're out for 3 days and then you're back and then you're out for another 7 days, it's not, so you aggregate those, it would be 7 days of the 14 that's afforded under FFCRA that you'd be entitled to. You basically are entitled to a max of 14 days of paid sick leave at no expense to yourself across the entire year. And just FYI, all the FFCRA law, federal law, that expires on December 31st, 2020. It's very possible that it will be extended by our dear Congress, but as of now, the expiration date is 12/30/2020.
Thank you, Michael. Will elementary students be receiving their own Chromebooks on the first day of school? Dr. Cavieri, would you like to read that or answer that?
Sure. So again, our hope, our goal is to start as soon as possible this week in trying to get the devices here, to get teachers them first, and then in working with the cabinet, we are going to do 6th grade next and then 5th, and then I will take it from there on advisory from cabinet as to where I should head next to give out those devices. And we will be hoping to get as many out as possible before the start of school. But again, that's 5,800 students, and any teacher that needs a Chromebook or an exchange will all somehow have to get scheduled and come to admin, and it all has to be done outside, I'm being told. So I know Mr. Giordano is going to work with me on getting perhaps a tent or something set up, but you know, we are going to try our very best and then have the rest at buildings so that we can give devices out to any student that we missed, any family that couldn't make it, or anything else that came up. We do have MiFis available for students as well. I think there was a question there on that. So those will be going out to any students that said that, or families that have stated that they need Wi-Fi, because I know that Altice and Verizon are not doing the free Wi-Fi anymore.
Okay, Dr. Cavieri, while you're on there, one quick question is, are there any strategies in place to prevent the taping of teachers on Google Meets? Is there any way we can disable that, or?
I wouldn't want to put anyone in under a false sense on that one. I mean, if you're at home and a parent wants to, you know, stand there recording it in a different way,
True.
you
That's
know,
true.
I would never want to say that because we put something in place that you're safe from that. I know that there's a piece of paper that came from Mr. Giordano. Am I correct that Eric Levine had sent something across that parents that are doing synchronous learning have to sign or something? And I do believe there was a statement there saying that they have to, you know, use their best judgment and do the proper things, and that this is,
Yes,
you know,
and we're going to send that out to parents. Yes,
okay.
absolutely.
So that would help,
I will
you
share
know,
that.
let
Yes,
parents know what they shouldn't, you know, be doing with that as well.
perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Carrieri. And this is also for you, Dr. Carrieri, if we can. I guess, and I would understand this to be, you know, similar to a lot of people. I guess people are nervous about exactly what synchronous instruction is. It's overwhelming, and for one, I am having trouble wrapping my brain around it. Training is essential, and I know you're planning on some of that. Do you want to try to explain that a little bit?
Sure. So as of this moment, and again, for everyone on, we have meetings every day where we discuss new things or other accommodations we're going to be making along the way. But as of this moment, I know that I will definitely be putting a video together on how to use Google Meet directly from a Chromebook, so you know where to click, how to make that work. And then I will be making another video that will come out on how to get from Google Meet to get to Smart Learning Suite and get that all up and running, and then to transfer that over to your smart board. I saw a question on, and I apologize, I don't know if it was in this Q&A, but it was on another list where teachers were mentioning, or something came up about, can you put a Chromebook onto the smart board? So I just wanted to clarify that that'll never work. Like, you can't just attach the Chromebooks to the smart boards to transfer information back and forth. That would be that Smart Learning Suite. And that would then go back to that idea that you have lessons in Smart that you would have brought up on screen that you would now just be sharing out to families. So those are the two items that I have so far. And in light of that, we won't be having in-person PDs. It will be videos that you can watch. And then, you know, if we hear feedback that additional, you know, items we have that we could share out with you, or if something else needs to be clarified, I'd be happy to do that as well. And they will be up and posted in ClassLink under our area where we had all the help resources.
Dr. Carrieri, can we do them also as maybe a webinar? That might be a little bit better, because then people can ask questions as they go along.
Whatever mode you would like, Mr.
Yeah,
Gier.
I think a webinar might be a little bit better, but we can reach out to our staff developers and ask them if they could do that as well.
Okay, sure.
Thanks. All right. Somebody said, are you considering chemicals that have a faster kill or drying time? Well, we use Virex. Virex is very quick. Once it's sprayed on, it takes 10 minutes to dry, and then it's disinfected. So, I mean, that's what many schools use. There will not be hand sanitizers in the classroom. If you want to bring it in for your own desk, yes, you need to be careful what you share with students. Even though the governor does say we should be using alcohol-based sanitizers, that's not been approved for students. So we continue to get the non-alcohol based that are proven to kill COVID-19, but those will be in the halls. We are increasing them by quite a few. They will be at the end of each hall, and on long hallways, it'll be in the middle. I'm sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice. But if you want to bring stuff in for personal use, you could do that. I would just be leery of what you share with students. In the past, desks were not cleaned at the high school each night, even though they're supposedly part of the routine. Again, the reason for this is there was not enough custodians. No, I think there was just not enough time. Many of those rooms were being used for adult ed. There will be no night activities. Once the school day is over, the school day is over. Every room will be cleaned. They will be Virex. We bought the sprayers for the high school, the middle school, and all the elementary schools. So the sprayers will go around, and the Virex will be put on every desk. So that will be done. So that I'm assured will be done. We also need to keep a log of that. So, okay, well, I could talk to Mr. Pastor about announcements outside of homeroom. I think if it's in the safety of our students, I think he would certainly agree with that, and I'll talk to him about that.
Giordano, I can address a couple of the Ed Law 2D questions that we received in the chat.
If you could, please. Thank you.
Yep, sure. To help with remote learning, will practices be put into place to speed up the process of getting Ed Law 2D compliance forms signed and returned so that we have access to more platforms and websites? So with the pandemic going on, we've been given no flexibility as it relates to Ed Law 2D. That law still is, it's still the law of the land. There was an extension on publishing the actual policy and procedures to October, but we've already published our policy and procedures, so we're meeting that. All other requirements of Ed Law 2D are still in place. As it relates to getting the Ed Law 2D riders signed by our third-party contractors to allow us to start a relationship with those vendors to use some of their software, the bottleneck is really not on us. It's really on the vendors. What happens is as soon as you guys ask for a new piece of software, we send that our district Ed Law 2D rider to the vendor, and it's usually pretty quick if they just sign off on it. But most of the time, it goes to their legal counsel. Their legal counsel has some feedback on what they want placed into the Ed Law 2D rider from what's in our district language. It has to go to our outside legal counsel to be reviewed, and there's usually an iterative back and forth process that goes on before it actually gets signed. And in some cases, some of the smaller vendors just don't want to do it because they feel like they're taking on more risk than it's worth. So to answer that question, we are, as soon as we're receiving those requests, we're putting them forward and giving them to the vendor and following up with them on a periodic basis. But it's really tough to get them completed very quickly unless the vendor is amenable to just signing off on the district rider.
Okay, thank you, sir. BOCES, I'll adjust the BOCES plan for high school students. As of right now, BOCES is running full time. We're running at 25%. I've been speaking to Dr. Brody to figure out how we could do it. We actually talked about doing it like we do for midterms and final exams, where students would be picked up on the days they are not in school at their elementary schools. The problem is there's going to be classes that they're scheduled to be in. So we need to work that out. We're going to have the counselors look at those students and see if it's an elective, if it's a core. Obviously, we don't want a student missing out on any core classes that they need to graduate. If it's an elective, we may need to move it around. We may ask them to take it in a subsequent year, but we'll have to have those discussions. I'm sorry, hold on one second. Dr. Cavalieri, about Chromebooks, teachers receive personal Chromebooks. So if they receive, if so, when will they receive them? I think you answered that already. Chromebooks will be charged at home at night. There will be charging stations within the school. Dr. Cavalieri, can you answer that? In elementary schools, will students be expected to bring Chromebooks back and forth?
Sure. Again, I believe this has to be more of a conversation to decide if that's going to be across the district or, that every day they will have to bring them back and forth with them. That I'm not clear on because it would depend if the teacher in the classroom has maybe got a lesson going on that would require, because their students at home, that they're using their Chromebooks. It would make sense that the Chromebooks were there with them. We would try, as we do at the high school, middle school, to continue that topic of, charge it every night, make sure you charge it before you go to bed, bring it with you. And again, it's all in practice of needing it, and they'll get used to doing it. Once we hand out all the devices here, the buildings will get back their empty cases, and then they will have the ability to charge some devices for students if they haven't brought them. I will not say in any case do we have enough that if 100 kids in one elementary school have forgotten or not charged a device that they needed, that we will have ones in a building just to give them out. But we will have some around. There will be chargers, and those carts will be available for students to put their devices in if they needed to.
Thank you. What is being done to ensure all students have internet service and Chromebooks? We did purchase internet. We purchased, I think Dr. Cavalieri said it before, MiFis, to make sure that students will have that. We actually had to purchase more complicated ones only because of the live streaming. And every student in the district will have a Chromebook. Home computer, I don't understand this question because you're going to be in school when the students are home with a Chromebook. So I'm not sure. It says, can we use a home computer that has a camera rather than a Chromebook? You're going to be in
Um,
school. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Giordano,
Yeah.
I think this question had come up from someone else. They wanted to know at one point if they could bring in their own device from home. So if that's kind of where maybe this question's going, we can't do that. You know, a teacher could have one personal device on the network, but I think it would be it would be a much better idea to stick with that everyone's using the Chromebooks, because we have the ability here to fix those much faster than having to mitigate what's going on someone's laptop or other things like that. So I would say that using the Chromebooks as that mean of getting back and forth to students and communicating is really the best course of action.
Okay, so the next two questions, I believe, are directed at you as well, Aileen. Uh, uh, s- uh, does that mean that it has to be a lesson utilizing Smart Notebook, or will Smart Learning Suite allow us to project anything onto the Smartboard example, our Pearson math lessons?
No, the Smart Learning Suite is specifically for your Smartboard lessons. I am working with network operations on the other tools that we had in place last year where you could share out your screen. The company, it's touch and go. Sometimes it works very well. We're looking to see if there's other ways to do that, but it would definitely be only if you had Smartboard lessons. That's where that idea of using, you know, of having things prepared, you know, online already for students to use might help with planning and things like that. And I know that even saying that out loud is a daunting task. So, but as Mr. Caravana had already said, everyone is really just trying to help each other get through these very difficult times. And everyone knows that, you know, everyone's not an expert on getting it right the first time or getting everything together. So we're all here to help.
So again, the Envisions program is not something that could be projected on the Smartboard as well? Because I know another person asked that.
If it's up on the Smartboard and then the person is using their camera and teaching towards the Smartboard, then the lesson would be up there if the teacher was standing at the board. We did have another software in place. I will have to check with Tyler to see if it will work over Google Meet. I know it works inside of our network, but it's that extra piece that I'm not quite sure of if there's any sort of laws or other reasons why it won't go out or on the network and not
Okay.
out over a Google Meet. So I will have to look into that.
Perfect. And the last question, or maybe two more questions. The Google Meet can be done from the teacher's PC. We're going to recommend it be done right from the Chromebooks that we're going to give everybody. Correct?
Right. You can't do it from the classroom PC. There's no microphones and there's no
Cameras, right?
video. So you're going to have to use the Chromebook to do all that.
And quite honestly, like I said before, there are no webcams available. So someone asked if we could set up a webcam on their on chalkboard. So that's not really possible at this time. And Aileen, again, for you, is there software available to use that allows us to see the students' computer screens if they are working on the screen to help them while they are remote learning?
So we did have it was called Classroom and it was in place last year and it works on our network, on our Chromebooks in school. Again, I don't know how that works at home, if it can transfer to where kids are or anything like that. So I would have to talk to network operations about that piece. I wrote both questions down and then Mr. Giordano, however we would get those answers out to people, I'll give them to you and then we could share them out.
Perfect. Okay, and there's one more.
Mr. Giordano, can I just answer a question that I sort of
Absolutely, please do. Jump in
quite a
anytime.
few times, so I figure I would just answer it live here. You know, one of the questions is how are we going to get our students, you know, on the first day of school, if we have our A group, how is our B group that is working remotely going to know, et cetera? You know, obviously the first day of school is a day of getting to know you activities, you know, demonstrating what, you know, appropriate protocols are for your class, what your learning expectations are, what your year is going to look like, you know, all of those types of first day of school activities, you know. So you obviously want to start your year with your students being involved and creating that community right away. You know, my best suggestion is you use Parent Square and or the email list, and send an email out to the parents welcoming them, like many of you do when you send your welcome letters to your parents, and indicate that this is the time that students need to be on for remote learning, you know. And again, there's assistance if the parents need help in figuring out how to get on. But that's the best scenario. I mean, the first day of school is going to be, you know, we're all back after many, many months. I think people are, you know, going to be like a deer in the headlights, some of the students. So like, and just trying to navigate this through. But, you know, again, we have to be flexible. And that's probably the best route is through Parent Square. Notify them, this is what they need to do, and at least be on at, you know, 9:05 or 9:15 the latest, and we're going to get started, and we're going to introduce ourselves and sort of get to know you and start the year that way.
To follow up on Dr. Omas's statement there about Parent Square, we flipped eSchool over on Friday. For any teachers that are not seeing their students in their classes, it's locked on purpose because the moment that goes live, those parents that are already registered with Parent Square could then see what class they're in. And it's my understanding by the cabinet that there are changes being made at all grade levels based on, you know, who's remote and some other items. So that is locked right now, but that would be your mode of communication to your parents. I already made a note for this. I know I did a video once on Parent Square, but I will do another one and bring it up at these meetings when we're going to be doing some training and such, that would be the communication, because whatever you type in a post or put out, as Dr. Omas was saying, it will translate to whatever language the parent wants on their end. And you could use it right off your computer at school, or if you wanted to have the app on your phone, you could do that as well. And then you could quickly communicate with parents, because we really never want you giving your cell phone number out to parents. And that's why we purchased Parent Square. And for high school, middle school students, we do still have Student Square available, and that will be pushed out again by buildings to remind students to set that up for themselves so that you can communicate directly with them if you needed to get to them on things that were going on in class, or if they had questions and couldn't get into a meeting or something, they might hit you up on that. And that would be easy to see on Parent Square on your version of it on your computer in your classroom. Or again, if you had it on your phone, you could have it there as well.
Thank you, Dr. Carriere. Do we expect elementary students to be putting and taking off masks all day and doing it correctly, since they will need to use the bathroom, throw things away, visit the nurse, like frequent nosebleeds? Masks protect others from in your room, including the teacher. It's what we expect everywhere else. Why not have it in, you know, for several hours during the day? Again, we're following what we put out a survey. Parents are asking it to be 6 foot distancing without masks. So, you know, we're gonna start this way. We need to change. The plan is ever changing. Does the no lockers apply to musical instruments? I believe it does. Whenever we put things in lockers, there's any chance that germs could start to be involved. I have to tell you, I think we're going to have to limit or not limit, but have no instruments be left in lockers. So that, and I know Mr. Trapani is going to meet with the music teachers to develop some protocols. Small groups have pulled out. Somebody asked about Virex. Virex takes 10 minutes once you spray it, and you spray it on the entire surface that the student was in. Once you spray it, it takes 10 minutes to dry, and then the disinfectant is actually working at that point. Can we push the Meet the Teacher Night for a later date at the end of September? This will give us time to be able to gather and answer some questions from parents. Right now, it's in the calendar where it is. We could certainly discuss that with the administration as well. We haven't really talked about that at this point. Do we have access to this question and answer feed? Whatever is written, you will have access to. Whatever is said verbally, you can come back and watch. We're recording this, so that is possible. If students need to be distanced and materials need to be washed between use, how are labs expected to be performed? My understanding is that the virtual simulations are not acceptable format for labs at New York State. Again, it may need to be washed in between periods, or in between lab, or have enough so where you can just put it into another area and then wash them at the end of the day. Um, Is the district purchasing a third-party subscription Ed Puzzles? I don't know about any of that at this point. I'll leave this question on, Mr. Zerbo, and ask Dr. Carriera to look at that. Please clarify. Go ahead.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
I have quite a few questions of people, even in my personal email, about new programs that they want. At this point, everything needs to go through their media coordinator to ask if it's something for a reason that, they would be using, and then it would come up to, discussed after that. But there are no funds to purchase any additional items outside of the ones we've already bought for the year. That's why this, and it's the same every school year when it comes to our school budgets and technology. But that might be the best course of action, that if it's something that is imperative, even some of those labs I hear that you're discussing, some of those virtual programs that are quite expensive, if New York State was to change that idea and then it was brought to coordinators and then up to us and then to cabinet and then decisions were made to purchase items, I think that really, rather coming directly from a teacher to you, myself, or like that we should really go through coordinators to hear if that's software that they're interested in.
Great, good answer. Thank you.
Mr. Giordano, can I just address one question, which I think is an excellent question?
Please do.
Class Dojo now was finally approved, and I know many of the teachers used that where the students had created their own person, and they used it as I guess, as a communication tool and a behavioral classroom management tool, and asked if that's the means that they can use to communicate with their parents. I just want to reiterate that Parent Square is our chosen district-wide way of communicating with parents. That should be your primary source. And the reason is parents have the option of receiving that information in their chosen home language. So whatever you type in is then delivered to them in their home language for them to understand, to be able to receive the information in a manner that they can understand. So that is the route that we should be going when we're communicating with parents, any important information, announcements, etc.
Perfect. And I think that's the perfect reason, is that it translates it to whatever language is in e-school. So I think that's perfect. Thank you, Dr. Romas.
May I just interject, Mr. Giordano? Well, I'm seeing a lot in the chat. Teachers are wanting to know, understandably, if there is a way that we can indicate which students are remote in e-school. Is that something that we can do, Dr. Cavalieri?
I saw it. I don't know. That would be.
Can I answer that?
Okay, good. Go ahead. I don't have that answer.
Go ahead.
Because I've been working with John Contest, who's been going back and forth with eSchool, because the elementary principals wanted it posted on a child's eSchool to determine whether they were an A group or a B group. So he said he is figuring out a way to indicate whether they're in an A group, a B group, or a full remote. So he is working on that. So you would be able to look up on eSchool and see that indicator.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't see why it would be an issue. We can do it with IEPs. We can do it with Ls. We can do it with alerts. So I'm sure we could get a dot of some sort, maybe to mix things up.
Thank you, Mr. Caravana. Also, somebody asked if we were buying barriers for the small tables for the small groups. That is a yes. How will the students join a Google Classroom on the first day of school if they aren't in school that day? Certainly, we will communicate. Again, we can communicate through Parent Square and make sure students know what those links are. Dr. Cavalieri, is there an easy way to do that?
I would, well, if the teacher is in communication with the parents, as we have already pushed out at, I know the elementary levels, they already, I'm going to call it like a bullet, like it went out to remind parents of like their welcome letter. They are already enrolled in Parent Square. Parent Square is not something that you have to opt into. You're already in. So that would be the communication. If I was a teacher and I was a second grade classroom teacher and I'd written a welcome letter to the parents in Parent Square and saw, because you can see which parents you've heard back from. If you hadn't heard back from some, I would check with my building admins to make sure those parents were receiving it. And even on the first day of school, when you're stuck in that moment and you need to get to 2 or 3 kids that aren't online, I would suggest that Parent Square should be that means that you're trying to get to the parent on to say, I don't see them on, are you stuck, are you having trouble? And that way you'll know what's really happening rather than just not having the kid on screen. But again, as Mr. Caravana already said, and Dr. Olmos has echoed, that first day of school, I really believe everyone, it's going to be like that first day of school for everyone ever as a teacher, where you're nervous and you're trying just to figure it out. The parents will feel the same. And we will hope that everything goes ever so smoothly and every kid can get on and you can say hello to them all. And if it just takes till that afternoon or the next day as some things are worked out, there's no expectation that, that we're going to, in any way we're going to all be very supportive in trying to help each other through it.
Thank you, Dr. Carrieri. Somebody said that their classroom does not have windows. Certainly, I would address that with the building administration. We have been given Lysol. No, we can't use Lysol wipes to clean textbooks. We'll have to see what we can use. Probably the same ones we use on the same wipes we use on the computers. So we'll have to talk about answering that. Not answering, about purchasing some of those. Plan states the student in elementary not share desks in classes and capped at 50%. Right. Okay. Can you explain how this? All right. So, Dr. Olmos, if you could, it says the plan states that students in elementary school cannot share desks and will be capped at 50%. People are not understanding how we can do this in mainstream classes for special self-contained classes, as one teacher cannot push into 2 classrooms at the same time. How can social distancing be maintained as well as class?
Well, it's really a special ed question, and it is addressed in the plan.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure if you had read the plan. This plan does state that we are not mainstreaming for the first few weeks of school, so that
Yes.
can sort of see how things work out and sort of limit the exposure and cross-contamination.
Correct, Dr. Olmos. So our 15-1 students that typically mainstream for, say, ELA or math, they'll be remaining in the 15-1 classrooms so that they have in-person instruction every day.
Thank you. Also, somebody asked about what disinfectants are we going to use. I did say Virex. There's another disinfectant. I've asked Mr. Cazzetto to post those to the website because parents did ask. So the MSDSs for that will be posted. Can our live stream lessons be taped so parents can watch them at a later date? That's certainly the prerogative of the teacher. They could do that. What happens when a student comes to school and forgets their Chromebook, or it is not charged? I don't know, Dr. Cavieri, do we have any spare Chromebooks to keep in schools?
So again, it would just be, we would have some at each building. There would be, we'll be setting up a spot maybe at the elementary main offices or wherever is decided that students could go. And then even at the high school, middle school level, we always have spares. We had enough to do for the one-to-one, but it would always run out by a certain period. So I can't say that there will always be enough for every single kid if they forgot it, if they didn't charge it. But as time goes by, we found with those one-to-one students that they become more receptive to bringing it in because there are consequences put in place at the high school, middle school level for, you've forgotten it so many times and things like that, that we may be looking at to bring down towards elementary after, a time to just let everyone get used to this whole new normal that we're doing. But we'll try our best and have those cases available for them to try and charge them throughout the day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Giordano, can I jump in and answer a question that I've been getting a lot of texts on?
Sure.
As far as the alphabet breakdown goes, I know that there appear to be some inconsistencies. This was done approximate 25% at the secondary level. First of all, I know a lot of people have been saying, why is the last group so big? I actually texted Dr. Brody yesterday, and she explained to me that there were so many R's that in order to keep it as not confusing, rather than split R's midway, they just opted. So it was either going to be the third group or the fourth group that was going to be large, rather than make it more confusing by cutting R midway through. And so as a result, there may be instances where you have 15 students on one day and 1 on another day. What I would tell you is to use your judgment. If social distancing and the 6 feet separation starts to become a problem, I would definitely bring it up to your administration and see if there could be some accommodations made. But let's not worry about that until that actually happens when you take a look at your roster. If you think, that there's something inordinately uneven where you have, say, 22, 5, 1, and 1, I think those should be few and far between. The other thing that I want to just discuss is someone brought up a good question. Please excuse any of us if we are using the terms live streaming and synchronous interchangeably. There is a difference. We know that. I think it's just, I think it's a slip of the tongue, but to be clear, the plan is 100 minutes of synchronous instruction. It doesn't have to be live streamed.
Okay,
And that's all I have to say about that.
thank you, sir.
Thank you, Doris. Can I just answer one
Sure.
other question here? I've had a few people ask a question about students that are on full remote. So in other words, they have 1 or 2 children that are fully remote, let's say at the elementary level on their roster. How is that going to be different? They're going to be exactly the same as if they were a student on an A day, B day schedule, except they don't ever come to school. They are going to participate the same way as your remote students would be participating on their not in school days. So it's not that you're expected to have a whole separate, here's my remote class, here's my A day, B day class. They are part of your class roster as well. And the expectation is that they will attend to instruction just the same way as your remote students do on their remote days, except they're not coming to school the next day.
Okay, we're getting close to the end. We'll go through a few more things. Michael, somebody asked about the temperature checks. Will the temperature checks look like every morning? Will there be long lines out the door? What about cold and inclement weather?
We think we have enough screening devices for we're ordering enough screening devices for all of our buildings so that there will not be long lines at the door unless every single person arrives at the same exact minute. We're going to have at least 2 to 3 screening devices at all entry points in each of the buildings. And the screening devices are tested to actually take a temperature within under a second. One of the devices we're looking at is a second, one is 0.1 seconds. So we are expecting that we should have enough technology capacity to be able to get people into the buildings in a timely manner so that we're not queuing people outside. And just to be clear, when I say outside, I mean outside of the hallways, the general entrances. We're going to be setting up the security checkpoints within the buildings. It's not going to be outside the front door in most cases.
Michael, can you also describe the app that teachers will use to do the questionnaire?
Yeah, it's a BOCES Capital Region project. It's basically a website that you would log into. You access every single day. If you have a smartphone, we would recommend you use your smartphone. You answer the 5 questions electronically. You hit submit. If all your responses are no to the questions, you'll get a confirmation green message that says you are cleared to enter the building. That'll be checked when you enter the building by a monitor at the front of the entry point by the security checkpoint. If you answer yes to any of those questions, you should not be entering a building. You shouldn't be leaving your house. So a red message will pop up in that case. And when you get screened at the front door, you would not be permitted to enter the building. It'll be a Lindenhurst specific website that we would develop with BOCES. Once we get that in place, we will send out instructions to everybody to how to access it and how to answer the questions.
And just be clear, we're not going to know anything other than you were cleared. I mean,
Right, it's a yes, no. It's a yes, no answer.
Right. So the privacy issues are not an issue. Again, there's a lot of technology questions that we'll have answered. Will we take attendance to start at the end of class? Be sure the students are following through with remote instruction. Yes, that's in the protocols, I believe Dr. Oma said. If a teacher or class must quarantine because of the case, but the teacher is not sick, will classes go on as usual, full remote until the teacher and the class return to school? Yes, they will work remotely. That's why we developed the plan we did. At any time, we can go to a remote learning situation. If this was to happen as it did on March 17th, everybody be in place, everybody be in their classes, and everybody would be able to work remotely. So in any scenario that we come up with, we tried to make it so it would be seamless. So that's why we developed the plan we did.
And we should be all prepared for the event that happens, because if we have a positive diagnostic test in any of our buildings, it's likely that building may need to be closed for deep cleaning and sanitation. So one single positive test case could result in a closure of a school building. We'd have to switch to remote. It's not guaranteed, but it's likely.
Will teachers be trained in using a Chromebook and all features, or does it fall on teacher? No, we're going to put together some training. That's why we talked about coming back to Thursday before Labor Day weekend, so we can do some more some staff development.
Mr.
Okay,
Giordano, there's
Yes,
a few questions about the learning management system I saw, so I
Sure.
wanted to address that a little bit. The district had decided that by a survey that had gone out to teaching staff about what they felt most comfortable using, and Google Meet came back as what teachers wanted to use as the modality to conference with students. So that section cannot be changed. We want to keep that consistent across the entire district. I have been discussing with the cabinet over the last few weeks about what it might look like, because I know that we did do training at the high school, middle school level over the past 2 years for Schoology. But in speaking with Mr. Giordano, and then again, we will be speaking in cabinet after, it seems that most people really felt more comfortable using Google. So if it is decided by the cabinet that we switch over to using Google, then that would be Google Classroom and outside of Schoology. We wouldn't lose items in Schoology, but if such a decision was made, we would share that out with everyone, but that would be the learning platform then you would be a part of. I also shared with cabinet that there's some additional features that could be purchased to help bolster Google Classroom and Google Meet. It's like another level of Google. It's called Google Enterprise Edition. So if we were looking to do something like that, to switch from Schoology over to Google Classroom, I just saw those questions coming up multiple times about what we were using or how it was happening. And it's still a little bit up in the air, but as soon as we have a definite answer for that, we will push that out, and training will be given, as everyone did get training for Google over the last few years at every grade level. We would just perhaps do more targeted training for these specific items, because we're doing so much more remote learning.
Okay. You know what? We have about 4 minutes left. I'm going to ask everybody if they have any closing comments before we move on. Mr. Caravana, do you want to start?
Sure, you're just gonna go round?
Yep, I'll go around.
Listen, we don't have the answers to all of your questions. The fact of the matter is, we're all going through this together the first time. You cannot possibly imagine the various different permutations that the plan would necessitate. We're doing the best we can, and we'll figure it out together. You know, if someone doesn't log on to Google the first day because they didn't get the password, we'll work through it. You know, we're building the plane in midair. It's kind of like when Common Core unfolded. APPR will weather this too. Just go day by day and try to live in the moment, and just, you know, we'll take every precaution that we can, but let's work together and try to figure it out. as it comes up. There's no ideal situation here, and you know, not everybody is getting what they want, but these are the compromises that were made. This is the plan as it is. It's a living document that's going to be revised, revisited accordingly. I hope that after one cycle, we'll be able to say, hey, this is working well. Infection rates are low. Let's move up to 50%. Textbooks, computer issues, all of that stuff will work out. Focus on the positive. Focus on your family, your health. You know, sorry to say this in front of the superintendent and the board member, but we work to live. We don't live to work. And that's what is important to follow. You know, everything else will come.
I don't think you should be sorry for that. That's the truth. Dr. Omas?
Hi, I know that, you know, many of you have so many questions yet because it is all unknown at this time. You know, we will stumble a little bit, and that's okay. If you have questions specific to your building, you know, I need this, I need that, please speak to your building principal, speak to your head custodian. We will work it out. You know, there's questions of who's going to clean this, that, the other. You know, I know the custodians are going to work very hard to try and make sure that everything is done and taken care of so that everyone can be safe. We're all important. We're all, you know, an important piece of the puzzle here. And as Mr. Caravana said, we need to work together and, you know, enjoy the last remaining days. I know it's a scary time, but we'll get through this. Thank you.
Mr. Carney, sorry.
Oh, I have my doctorate. Thank you, Mr. G. As Dr. Omas and Mr. Caravana said, this is a stressful time, but we encourage you not to focus on all the minute details and stress about everything. Rather, we hope you look forward to the return of school, actually having students in front of you again in some capacity. And we would like you to focus on the positive. Together, we'll get through this like we did in the spring, and we will continue to assess our programs, how we're implementing our reopening plan, and make improvements as we can. I'm sure questions will arise between now and the start of school. Please reach out to the appropriate administrator, reach out to our offices. We are happy to help. And again, as everyone has said so far, we're in this together and we're going to make the best out of this difficult situation. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you, Brett. Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Giordano. Yeah, so I'll just echo what my colleagues have said. You know, this is my first year working in public education. Lucky me, walking into a global pandemic, and and you know, this is I've lived through the financial crisis and 9/11 in my professional career, and this is a whole nother animal. And we really do need to work together. We need to come up with creative solutions collectively. Central administration and the building administrators worked collaboratively to develop what we thought was the best possible plan. But we recognize we're not naive to think that we know all the answers. And as we said, this is a fluid process. We are going to stumble and we're going to need to make course corrections as we go through the reopening. But the plan was made with the best interest of the students at heart. We worked really hard to try to get all the health and safety protocols in place to balance the needs of all the various constituencies in our community, which, as most of you know, are which vary greatly across the spectrum. So, you know, as you look forward to the fall, I would encourage you all to reread the reopening plan. We'll try to address the remaining questions that are in the chat. I know there's still a significant amount, and I hope everybody has a chance to enjoy the last few weeks before we hit the ground running in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you. And in closing, I really want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today. I hope we answered some of your questions. It really is unsettling for all of us. We came up with a plan that we thought was best, being highly criticized about the 25%. People want to come back more. We feel that we want to keep our students and staff extremely safe. We want to work to do that within the guidelines and with some of the feedback from the community. So please stay safe, stay healthy. And quite honestly, if you have any more questions, please put them in the chat. We will do everything we can to answer them. Stay healthy and have a great day, everybody.